Get on the ground, now. Hands behind your head.
Officer, you are making a grave error. My hands are empty. I am not a threat.
You're not complying.
I am a retired Sergeant Major. I have a prosthetic leg. Touch me without cause and you violate federal law.
Stand by.
Officer, you are making a grave error. I am a retired Sergeant Major with 25 years of service to this country. I have a prosthetic leg that makes getting on the pavement difficult, and I have done absolutely nothing to warrant this aggression. Look at my hands. They are empty. But if you touch me without cause, you will be violating federal law and you are being recorded. The parking lot of the hardware store was bathed in the bright, harsh light of a Tuesday afternoon. It should have been a peaceful scene, contractors loading lumber, homeowners buying paint, the hum of suburban commerce. Instead, the air was thick with tension. Officer Kyle Braden, 32 years old and buzzing with an unearned sense of authority, had his hand hovering near his service weapon. He was staring down a man who didn't flinch, didn't panic, and didn't beg. Marcus Thorne sat on the tailgate of his pristine charcoal gray Ford F-150. He was 58 years old, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded olive drab hat with a simple patch on the front. His posture was perfect, his voice a deep resonant baritone that carried authority without shouting. He looked at Officer Braden not with fear, but with the disappointing realization that he was dealing with an amateur. "I'm telling you for the last time," Braden shouted, his voice cracking slightly, betraying his adrenaline. "Step away from the truck and get on the ground. You fit the description of a suspect reported for loitering and casing vehicles." "I own this vehicle," Marcus said calmly. "My registration is in the glove box. My identification is in my back pocket. I am waiting for my contractor to come out of that store with 3 bags of concrete. I am not casing anything. I am existing." "Stop reaching," Braden yelled, though Marcus hadn't moved a muscle. "Put your hands behind your head." "My hands are on my knees, officer. I am not reaching. I am not resisting. But I am also not going to degrade myself by lying face down in a parking lot because you received a vague phone call and decided to suspend the Constitution." By now, people had stopped walking. A woman loading mulch into her SUV 3 spaces over had pulled out her phone. A man in a flannel shirt, clearly a construction worker, had stopped his cart and was watching intently. The camera lenses were focused. The red recording lights were blinking. "I'm calling for backup," Braden snapped, tapping his radio. "Dispatch, I have a non-compliant subject at the hardware store, refusing lawful orders. Belligerent." Marcus shook his head slowly. "I am not belligerent, son. I am disciplined, and you are about to destroy your career because you lack the patience to verify a license plate." "Don't call me son," Braden sneered. "I am a police officer." "Then act like one," Marcus replied, his eyes narrowing. "Act like a professional who understands the Fourth Amendment. You have detained me. You have threatened me. You have no reasonable suspicion of a crime. You are profiling a man sitting on his own tailgate in broad daylight. Before this goes any further, I want you to take a breath and think about what the next 5 minutes are going to look like in a federal courtroom. Before we continue with this intense standoff, I need you to do something. If you believe that our veterans deserve respect and that police officers should be held to the highest standards of the law, hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story is about to expose a level of incompetence and bias that will make your blood boil. You don't want to miss how this ends. Marcus Thorne was not a man who sought trouble. He had spent over 2 decades in the United States Army, serving multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. He had led men into combat, he had lost friends, and he had sacrificed a part of his own body for his country. The prosthetic lower left leg he wore was a constant reminder of an IED explosion in Kandahar province 12 years ago. He had retired with a Silver Star and the respect of everyone who had ever served under him. Since returning to civilian life, Marcus had built a quiet, dignified existence. He ran a logistics consulting firm, volunteered at the local VFW, and spent his weekends working on home improvement projects. He was a pillar of his community, a man who paid his taxes, flew the flag on holidays, and believed deeply in the rule of law. That afternoon, he was simply running an errand. He needed concrete for a patio repair. He had called a local handyman, a young man trying to get his business off the ground, to meet him at the store to help with the heavy lifting. The handyman was inside paying for the materials. Marcus was outside enjoying the sunshine, waiting by the truck. Officer Kyle Braden, on the other hand, was a problem waiting to happen. With only 4 years on the force, he had already developed a reputation for being aggressive. He was the type of officer who viewed citizens not as the people he served, but as potential threats to be neutralized. He had transferred from a smaller department 2 years prior, leaving behind a string of complaints that had been quietly swept under the rug. The call that brought Braden to the hardware store was as flimsy as they come. A concerned citizen, likely just a busybody with too much time and too much prejudice, had called 911 to report a large black male loitering near the expensive trucks in the parking lot. The caller hadn't seen a weapon. They hadn't seen Marcus trying to break into a car. They just saw a black man sitting on a tailgate and decided he didn't belong there. Dispatch had relayed the call: suspicious person, black male, jeans and a t-shirt, sitting on a dark truck. When Braden pulled up, he didn't run the license plate of the F-150. If he had, he would have seen the name Marcus Thorne. He would have seen the disabled veteran status attached to the registration. He would have seen that the owner had no criminal record. Instead, Braden saw exactly what he wanted to see: a suspect. He parked his cruiser, aggressively blocking the lane, and stepped out with his mind already made up. He didn't see a retired sergeant major. He didn't see a grandfather. He saw a target. "Officer, I am going to ask you again," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the officer's escalating demeanor. "What is the specific crime you are investigating? Suspicious person is not a crime. It is a feeling. And right now, your feelings are violating my rights." "I don't have to explain myself to you," Braden retorted, moving closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "We have a report of potential auto theft activity in this area. You fit the description." "The description of a man sitting on a truck?" Marcus asked. "Is that the description? Because if the caller said black man, and that's all you have, then we have a constitutional problem. Terry versus Ohio requires reasonable, articulable suspicion that a crime is afoot. Not a hunch, not a neighbor's bias, facts. Give me a fact, officer." Braden didn't have facts. He had an ego, and it was being bruised in front of an audience. The crowd was growing. It wasn't just shoppers anymore. People were coming out of the store to see what the commotion was. A middle-aged woman in business attire stood about 20 feet away, holding her phone high. "He's not doing anything," she shouted. "He's just sitting there. I saw him drive in." Braden whipped his head around. "Ma'am, stay back. Do not interfere with police business." "I'm on public property," the woman shot back. "And I'm recording everything. You're harassing him." Braden turned his attention back to Marcus, his face flushing red. "Stand up. Now. Turn around." "I told you," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously calm. "I have a prosthetic leg. My balance is not what it used to be. If I stand up, I'm going to reach for my cane in the truck bed. If I reach for the cane, you are going to claim I am reaching for a weapon. I know how this game is played, officer. I've seen bad intelligence in war zones, and I'm seeing bad policing right now." "You're making this difficult," Braden spat. "No, you are making this illegal," Marcus corrected. "I am asserting my Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable seizure. You have detained me. You are not free to leave, correct?" "You're damn right you're not free to leave." "Then I am detained." "For a detention to be lawful, you must have reasonable suspicion. You haven't articulated any. You said auto theft. I have the keys in my pocket. The truck is unlocked. The registration is in my name. A simple check would prove this in 30 seconds. Why haven't you run the plate?" "I don't need to run the plate until I have you secured," Braden said, reciting a line he'd probably heard in a movie rather than the police academy. "You're failing to identify." California is not a stop and identify state unless I am being lawfully arrested or issued a citation. Marcus countered instantly. Since I have committed no crime, I am not required to show you my papers just because you asked. I am a citizen, not a subject. Braden's hand tightened on his holster. He was losing control of the narrative. The bystanders were murmuring agreement with Marcus. Braden felt the walls closing in, and instead of backing down, instead of de-escalating like a trained professional, he decided to force compliance. "That's it," Braden said, pulling his taser from his belt. "Get on the ground, or you're gonna get tased." The air left the parking lot. The silence was deafening. "Officer," Marcus said, looking Braden dead in the eye. "I survived Kandahar. I survived the blast that took my leg. Do you really think threatening me with a taser is going to make me surrender my dignity if you tase a disabled veteran sitting on his own truck for the crime of waiting for concrete? You better hope your union representative is a magician, because you are going to lose everything." "Last warning," Braden screamed, pointing the yellow device at Marcus's chest. "I am sitting still," Marcus said. "I am posing no threat. My hands are visible. If you deploy that weapon, it is excessive force. The Supreme Court has been very clear on this. Graham versus Connor. Look it up." Braden hesitated. The legal citation threw him off. Suspects weren't supposed to quote Supreme Court cases. They were supposed to run or fight or beg. Marcus did none of that. He just sat there, an immovable object of integrity. "I'm done talking," Braden growled. He holstered the taser and reached for his handcuffs. "You're under arrest." "Under arrest for what?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. It didn't matter. The officer had crossed the Rubicon. "Obstruction of justice, resisting a lawful order, disorderly conduct." Braden listed, throwing the book at him, hoping something would stick. Braden lunged forward, grabbing Marcus by the left arm. He didn't ask Marcus to turn around again. He just yanked. Marcus winced. The sudden jerk twisted his torso, sending a sharp bolt of pain through his lower back and down into the stump of his leg where the prosthetic attached. But Marcus didn't fight back. He knew that any physical resistance, even a reflex to pull away from pain, would be used to justify violence. "I am not resisting," Marcus said loudly for the cameras. "I am complying. You are hurting a disabled veteran." "Stop tensing up," Braden yelled, trying to twist Marcus's arm behind his back. "I am not tensing. That is my balance. I told you about my leg." Braden kicked Marcus's legs apart to widen his stance, his boot slamming into the carbon fiber of the prosthetic with a loud thack sound. The sound was unmistakable. It wasn't flesh and bone. It was metal and plastic. Braden froze for a microsecond. He had heard it. He knew what it was. But he was too committed. He shoved Marcus against the side of the truck, face first, into the hot metal. "You are making a mistake," Marcus whispered, his face pressed against the tailgate. "A career-ending mistake." "Shut up." Braden clicked the cuffs onto Marcus's wrists. They were tight, too tight. The crowd erupted. "He has a fake leg, you idiot!" The construction worker yelled, stepping forward. "Didn't you hear the sound? He's a vet." "Back off," Braden screamed at the crowd, his panic rising. "Everyone back up." "We got it all on video, officer," the woman in the business suit yelled. "Every second of it. You didn't even ask for his registration." Braden dragged Marcus away from the truck. Marcus stumbled, his gait uneven without his cane and with his hands bound behind him. He couldn't balance properly. He nearly fell, but Braden hauled him up by the handcuffs, wrenching his shoulders. "Easy," Marcus gritted out. "I cannot walk fast." "Get in the car." Braden shoved him toward the cruiser. As Braden pushed Marcus into the cramped back seat of the patrol vehicle, Marcus looked up. He saw his handyman, a young kid named David, coming out of the store with a flatbed cart loaded with concrete. David dropped the handle of the cart, his mouth open in shock. "It's okay, David." Marcus called out, his voice calm and commanding even from the back of a police car. Stay with the truck. Call my wife. Tell her to call Attorney Henderson. Tell him I'm being taken to the North Precinct. Do not engage with this officer. Just secure the vehicle." David nodded, stunned. "Yes, Sergeant Major." "Sergeant Major." The title hung in the air. Braden slammed the door shut. He breathed heavily, sweat dripping down his forehead. He got into the driver's seat. His hands were shaking. He looked in the rearview mirror. Marcus Thorne was sitting upright, staring at the back of Braden's head. His expression wasn't angry. It was pitiful. "You have no idea what you've just done," Marcus said softly. Braden didn't answer. He threw the car into drive and peeled out of the parking lot, sirens off, desperate to get away from the witnesses and the cameras. But he couldn't outrun the truth. The video was already uploading. The drive to the station took 15 minutes. It was the longest 15 minutes of Officer Braden's life. The silence in the car was heavy oppressive. Usually, arrestees would be cursing, banging on the glass, or crying. Marcus sat in absolute stillness, utilizing the tactical breathing techniques he had mastered in the mountains of Afghanistan. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. He was calming his nervous system, preparing for the next phase of the battle. Braden, on the other hand, was unraveling. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror. He saw the disabled veteran sticker on the windshield of the truck in his memory. He remembered the sound of his boot hitting the prosthetic. He replayed the crowd's shouts. "Sergeant Major." When they arrived at the precinct, Braden pulled into the sally port. He got out and opened the back door. "Watch your head," Braden said, his tone significantly less aggressive than before. He was starting to pivot, trying to be professional now that the damage was done. "I need my cane," Marcus said. "I left it in the truck bed. Walking without it with hands cuffed is dangerous." "We have wheelchairs inside," Braden muttered. He helped Marcus out, but Marcus stumbled again. Braden had to catch him. For a moment, the young officer held the weight of the older man, the man whose body had been broken in service to the country Braden swore to protect. They walked slowly into the processing area. The smell of stale coffee and industrial cleaner filled the air. It was a busy afternoon. Officers were typing reports. Phones were ringing. Braden led Marcus to the intake desk. Behind the high counter sat Sergeant Thomas Miller. Miller was 62 years old, a Marine Corps veteran of the Gulf War, gray-haired with reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He had seen every type of criminal come through those doors in his 30 years on the force. Miller didn't look up immediately. "Name and charges?" he asked, typing on his computer. "Marcus Thorne," Braden said. "Obstruction, disorderly conduct, resisting." Miller's fingers stopped typing. He froze. Slowly, he looked up over his glasses. He looked at Marcus standing there in handcuffs, leaning heavily on his good leg. He looked at the olive drab hat that had been knocked askew but was still on Marcus's head. He looked at the patch. 10th Mountain Division. Miller stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Marcus?" Miller asked, his voice stunned. "Hello, Thomas," Marcus replied calmly. "I'm afraid I'm having a bit of a bad day." Officer Braden looked between them. You know him, Sarge?" Sergeant Miller ignored Braden completely. He walked around the desk, moving faster than he had in years. He came right up to Marcus. "Take those cuffs off him," Miller ordered. His voice was low, dangerous. "Sarge, he was resisting, he wouldn't identify." "I said?" Miller barked, stepping into Braden's face. "Take those damn cuffs off him right now." The processing room went silent. Other officers stopped what they were doing. Miller was known for being even-tempered. Nobody had ever seen him yell at a fellow officer like that. Braden fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking violently now. He unlocked the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had bitten into his skin. "Are you okay, Sergeant Major?" Miller asked, using the rank with reverence. "My leg is a bit twisted, Thomas. He kicked the prosthetic to widen my stance. Didn't believe me when I told him I couldn't get on the ground." Miller turned to Braden. The look on the older sergeant's face was one of pure disgust. You kicked a prosthetic leg. You arrested Marcus Thorne. Do you have any idea who this man is? He runs the Veterans Support Network for this entire county. He is a Silver Star recipient. He was the keynote speaker at the Police Academy graduation 3 years ago. You were sitting in the audience when he spoke. Braden's face went pale. The color drained away completely. I didn't know. Because you didn't check, Marcus said quietly. You didn't listen. You didn't investigate. Get Lieutenant Vance, Miller ordered a nearby patrolman. Now! Lieutenant Vance was the watch commander. He was a sharp, no-nonsense administrator who was already having a headache of a day. When he walked into the processing area and saw Sergeant Miller offering a bottle of water to a man who looked like he should be leading a parade rather than standing in booking, he knew the headache was about to turn into a migraine. Report, Vance said. Officer Braden brought in Sergeant Major Thorne on obstruction charges, Miller said, his voice dripping with disdain. Braden initiated a stop based on a suspicious person call. No crime observed. Thorne asserted his rights. Braden escalated, kicked his prosthetic leg, arrested him for not getting on the ground when he physically couldn't. Vance closed his eyes for a moment. He took a deep breath. He looked at Braden. Is this true? Did you kick his leg? I was trying to widen his stance for a search, sir. I tapped his leg. I didn't know it was fake. I told you 3 times, Marcus interjected. And the crowd told you. And the sound of the boot on metal told you. Vance turned to Marcus. Mr. Thorne, I am Lieutenant Vance. I apologize for this. We are going to unarrest you immediately. You are free to go. We will give you a ride back to your vehicle. No, Marcus said. He didn't raise his voice, but the word hit like a hammer. Excuse me, Vance asked. I am not free to go just because you realized you messed up. I have been unlawfully arrested. I have been assaulted. My civil rights have been violated. I want the full booking report. I want Officer Braden's statement of probable cause. I want the body camera footage preserved immediately. And I want a medical evaluation for my leg and back before I leave this station. I want everything documented. Vance looked at Marcus and realized this wasn't going to go away with a handshake. Sir, we can handle this administratively. You will handle it administratively, Marcus said. But I will handle it legally. I asked my wife to call Attorney Henderson. Do you know him? Vance winced. Everyone knew Henderson. He was the most aggressive civil rights litigator in the state. He ate police departments for breakfast. Officer Braden, Vance said, his voice ice cold. Give me your badge and your gun. Sir, Braden squeaked. You are relieved of duty pending an internal investigation. Badge and gun. On the desk. Now. Braden slowly unholstered his weapon. He unclipped his badge. He placed them on the counter next to Marcus's water bottle. He looked like a child who had broken a priceless vase. Go to the locker room, change into civilians, and wait in my office, Vance ordered. As Braden walked away, stripped of his authority, shoulders slumped. Marcus watched him go. There was no triumph in Marcus's eyes, only sadness. He never should have been hired, Marcus said to Vance. He doesn't have the temperament. We're going to fix this, Sergeant Major, Vance said. You can't fix it, Marcus replied. You can only pay for it and learn from it. By the time Marcus left the station, escorted by Lieutenant Vance and Sergeant Miller, the video had gone viral. The woman in the business suit had posted it to Twitter and Facebook with the caption, San Diego police assault disabled veteran for sitting on his own truck. Unreal. Within 4 hours, it had 2 million views. The comments section was a firestorm. Veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and ordinary citizens were outraged. The visual of a young, aggressive officer screaming at a calm, older black man, followed by the sickening sound of the boot hitting the prosthetic leg, was undeniable. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. War hero arrested at hardware store. Officer suspended after assaulting disabled vet. Marcus Thorne held a press conference 3 days later. He stood at a podium leaning on his cane, flanked by his wife and Attorney Henderson. He didn't look angry. He looked dignified. "I fought for the freedom of this country," Marcus told the bank of microphones. "I lost my leg defending the Constitution. To come home and have that same Constitution violated by the very people sworn to protect it. It is a betrayal. Not just of me, but of every citizen who expects to be treated with dignity." The lawsuit was filed the following week. It alleged Fourth Amendment violations, excessive force, false imprisonment, and battery. But the investigation that followed revealed something even darker. Attorney Henderson subpoenaed Braden's past records. They found a pattern. Over his 4 years, Braden had stopped black men at a rate 4 times higher than the department average. He had 12 excessive force complaints, all of them dismissed by his previous supervisors as within policy. The suspicious person call was traced back to the caller, a woman who admitted to investigators that she hadn't seen Marcus do anything wrong, she just felt unsafe because he was sitting there. The internal affairs investigation was swift and brutal. With the national spotlight on them, the department couldn't protect Braden. The chief of police publicly apologized to Marcus. He announced a complete overhaul of the department's training on interacting with citizens with disabilities and a new rigorous audit of stop and frisk practices. But for Braden, it was over. The investigation concluded that he had fabricated the belligerence in his report. The body camera footage proved Marcus had been perfectly calm. Lying on a police report is a crime. Kyle Braden was fired. 2 months later, the district attorney, under immense public pressure, charged him with misdemeanor assault and filing a false report. He pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, receiving probation, and a permanent ban from working in law enforcement anywhere in the United States. 8 months after the incident, the city settled the lawsuit. They agreed to pay Marcus Thorne $1.2 million. It was one of the largest settlements for a single arrest in the city's history. But Marcus didn't buy a new car. He didn't go on a vacation. The day the check cleared, Marcus walked into the offices of the Veterans Legal Defense Fund. He handed them a check for $1.2 million, every single penny. "Use this," he told the director. "Use this to help the veterans who don't have my rank, the ones who don't have a video, the ones who get stopped in the dark and have nobody to witness it. Protect them." Marcus returned to his quiet life. He still went to the hardware store. He still flew his flag. But the community had changed. The officers who patrolled the neighborhood drove a little slower, waved a little more respectfully. They knew that the community was watching. They knew that a badge was a symbol of trust, not a license to bully. One evening, Marcus was sitting on his porch, polishing his boots. His grandson, a 10-year-old boy named Elijah, sat next to him. "Grandpa," Elijah asked, "are you mad at the police?" Marcus stopped polishing. He looked out at the street where a patrol car was slowly cruising by. The officer inside gave a polite nod. Marcus nodded back. "No, Elijah, I'm not mad at the police. We need police, but we need good police. I'm mad at bad behavior, and I'm mad when people with power forget that they work for us." "Is that why you didn't fight back?" Elijah asked. "I did fight back, son." Marcus smiled, tapping his temple. "I just used a different weapon. In war, you use a rifle. In a civilized society, you use the truth. The truth is the most powerful weapon we have. Never forget that." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over the porch. Marcus Thorne, the soldier who had given a leg for his country and his dignity for his community, sat in peace. He had won his last battle not by firing a shot, but by standing his ground. This story reminds us that freedom isn't free and rights are like muscles. If you don't exercise them, you lose them. Marcus Thorne showed us that true strength isn't about being loud or aggressive. It's about knowing who you are and standing firm in your principles. What would you have done if you were in Marcus's shoes? Would you have been able to stay that calm? And do you think the punishment for Officer Braden was enough, or should he have faced jail time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like and share it to support the channel. See you in the next one.